3D printing is a very common way of manufacturing that we see in today's world in industry, but not many people know how 3D printing works and the types of 3D printing there are. I myself have owned a 3D printer for almost 4 years, and I've been researching them for around 5. So I've learned many different types and many different ways that there are of 3D printing. Today I'll first be going over where 3D printing files come from and how you can make them, and then I'll be going over the main 3 types of 3D printing, which is FDM, SLA, and powder 3D printing. First, I will go over the file for what the printer uses. The file that a 3D printer uses is called an STL file, which is just the file type of what it is. It's not really anything important. To make an STL file, you need a number of different 3D printing softwares or 3D modeling softwares. I tend to use geometric type ones like Inventor or like Fusion, but there's also animated ones like Meshmixer or Sculptus. I personally have the student version of Inventor, which I get free for 3 years as long as I'm a student at a school that uses Inventor, which is pretty nice. I just have to reset an email every once in a while. I can continue to get it free. I also have like Meshmixer, like I mentioned, in Blender, which is like 3D modeling for faces or more detailed animations. But now that you know where the files come from, what types of 3D printing are there? The most popular type of 3D printing is called FDM. These printers are what you see at our school and like what most people have in their homes. It's the cheapest option, it's the easiest to use. FDM stands for Fused Deposition Modeling and works according to Alcius Bernis Verotis, which is some article name, like the author's name, and his article Introduction to FDM 3D Printing on 3dhubs.com. An object is built by selective depositing melted material in a predetermined path layer by layer. Basically that means that it's extruded out of a nozzle like a hot glue gun would be, and it's built thin layers layer by layer until it has a 3D printed object. And it's pretty cool. I use it all the time. This is the most effective option. It's faster and it's the cheapest out of all the different types of 3D printing. But now that you know about FDM printing, what is SLA? SLA, or stereolithography, was the first industry 3D printing method. It came out first. It was at the time the only way to 3D print. But it's still used in industry in some households today. According to all3dp.com article, Stereolithography SLA 3D printing simply explained, posted on August 1st, 2019. Stereolithography works by using a high-powered laser to harden liquid resin that is contained in a reservoir to create desired 3D shape. Essentially, the laser is used to harden the layers of liquid, again, layer by layer, like FDM printing, and it's a lot more accurate than FDM printing. It takes a lot longer due to this, but by doing this, there's no lines that you can physically see. It's a smooth finish, unlike FDM. But because of this, it's a much more expensive machine. Most home SLA resin printers are around $1,000. The good ones are up to $3,000, and then industry ones are way over that. It takes, like I said, it takes much longer and it's way more expensive. The resin itself is around $60 a bottle. That's just for home 3D printing. I can't imagine how expensive it is for industry. And it's just much more expensive and takes much longer. The next type of 3D printing is very similar to SLA, but it has one big difference. It uses powder. Powder 3D printing has a number of different methods, but is most consistently considered SLS, or Selective Laser Sintering, which, according to Jackson O'Connell in his article, Powder 3D Printer, what it is and how it does it work on all3dp.com, works by: the powder printing material is loaded into the powder bin of the printer, where it is heated to a temperature just below its melting point. Once the desired temperature has been reached, a thin layer of powder is spread over the build platform by a recoater. A CO2 laser then selectively sinters the powder layer according to the model. This layer by layer method is mostly used for metal. It's very similar to SLA, but it has powder. So you see, you can't have liquid metal without it being boiling hot. So you use a powder of the metal, which is heated to just below its melting point, and the CO2 laser brings it to its melting point, and then it hardens into the shape. And this creates a very smooth finish. It's better than SLA in the fact that it's a much more detailed print, and it's by far way better than FDM. This makes it a lot more expensive though. Most metal printers are around $100,000. The one I saw myself at Delaware Dynamics in downtown Muncie was well over $1 million, making this a much more expensive way of printing. And it's also much more expensive to maintain and use the powder, because again, metal powder it's not going to be cheap for you to use. But this is something more for manufacturing, considering many people aren't going to be able to afford this for ourselves in our own home. They know the basics of primary methods of 3D printing objects. Let's go over what the main points were today. 3D printer files can come from many different 3D modeling softwares that are free, or there's some paid versions like Inventor besides the student version I mentioned. These files can be used by many different printers that build these models layer by layer and using many different methods. The primary, which are FDM, which uses a filament to extrude through a nozzle into the shape layer by layer. SLA, which uses a liquid resin with a laser to harden this liquid resin. And then SLS, which uses a layer and metal powder to shape the models. I hope that you've learned something more about 3D printing. This is one of my favorite hobbies, and I hope that you are interested in this and get into it in some time in your own time.